this is how it all started. Back during the pandemic, I wasn't able to see patients in person for a while. And so instead of just shutting doors, I still wanted to be able to help people. I felt a lot of burden that people relied on me, and suddenly I was just like, oh, bye, see you when I can. So I started experimenting with video consultations, also known as telehealth. And it worked. It worked really well, actually. So initially we were doing it for back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, headaches, dizziness. But my own experience was that dizziness was the clear winner. People did really well. Started looking at some of the research and I found papers like this that found that physical therapists in America also found video consultations very effective. Now, they did an interesting one here because they looked at surveys where they asked both physical therapists and the participants, the patients, so doctor and patients, what was your experience of it? And both parties found it effective and were satisfied with it. Now, as research has gone on, more and more research has come out to support home-based therapy. Now, for a range, so some have been for very specific conditions, like where the vestibular nerve, that nerve that goes from the inner ear to the brainstem, when that gets damaged, home-based therapy is effective. But they've also done it for conditions like BPPV, vestibular migraine, even triple PD now is coming out on the research. Now we have some big studies like the systematic review. A systematic review is when they take all the research on one subject, put it all together to say, on balance, what is the answer? So rather than just cherry picking papers and saying, oh, this one supports it and these 10 don't, but let's not talk about those. A systematic review takes all of those and says, okay, on balance, it's slightly positive or it's slightly negative or it's very positive or very negative. And what we're seeing is that home-based therapy is just as effective as being seen in person. And that's really important. Now, one of the caveats to that is as long as the participant understands why they're doing it and how to do it. So in the old days, and I'm sure if you've accessed the NHS, you'll be very familiar with the idea of like, here's a sheet of paper with 30 exercises, off you go, let us know how you get on in 6 months' time. It's not good enough because some of those exercises are far too simple and some of them are far too hard. And yet you're meant to be doing all of them for hours a day and you don't really understand why. So when I was doing video consultations, one of the big issues with it was Wi-Fi connectivity, that if the connection was unstable, it was a waste of time. And of course, difference in quality of camera. Some people have very good quality cameras and other people don't, or maybe the Wi-Fi wasn't good enough so I couldn't see them or talk to them. And then the classic ones of just user error. Different people use different systems and just sometimes in a half an hour consultation, you spend 15 minutes just trying to start the conversation. So that's why I wanted to look at something that was more stable, and that's where the app came from. So the idea is that you have all the information available to you. You can watch it as many times as you want. And if you still have questions, I'm still here. It's not a faceless app. I'm here for you. Now, this is a piece of interesting research. This is looking at the traditional Cawthorne-Cooksey exercises, which were designed in the 60s, and it compares them to a more modern activity-based exercise program. Now, they found both were effective, which is great news. However, the more modern program that was more around activity was more effective than just sitting and doing like the classic no-nos and yes-yeses. Now, I would say this. When you are born, it takes you a year of your life to be able to stand up and take those first few steps. You could not do it in a day. No one can go from being on their back to running. And it's a bit like that with vestibular rehab. You have to have a certain level of skill to be able to do the more complex stuff. And so what you'll find with the full program is the first 4 weeks are fairly static. You're doing these no-nos, yes-yeses, you're standing heel to toe with your eyes closed, you're putting your head into different positions, just to get those fundamental building blocks back in place. So if we go back to a baby, the idea would be first they learn to push themselves up and hold themselves there. And once they can do that and they can roll over, then we start to learning how to control more complex things like getting into a crawling position. Then we start to learn to move. Then we learn to stand up with support and then start to cruise. Then we stand without support. Then we start to take those first steps. And then once you can take those first few steps, the world is your oyster and things explode. Kids start running, jumping, rolling, like doing forward rolls, backwards rolls. They start climbing. They start throwing, painting, drawing, all these amazing things. But it took a year to get those fundamentals into place. And with the full course, we have a similar ethos. The first month is about getting the building blocks in place. So the exercises are slow, steady, safe. They're about building confidence, reducing stress. And then once we got those building blocks in place, we explode. Things start getting much more dynamic, much more complex, to reflect the complexity of real life and to reflect pieces of research like this that find that activity-based exercises are more effective than just doing your standard old-fashioned exercises. Now, I'm constantly reviewing the research. So this is a modern updated guidelines. The last ones that the first version of the app was based on was from 2016. They've just been reviewed and updated in 2022, and the app will be updated with them. We're continually updating it and reviewing it. It's why throughout the app, you will be providing feedback. So there's three times over those 12 weeks, so every 4 weeks, you provide feedback on your dizziness, on your balance assessments, and on what you think of the app. Is it too hard? Is it too easy? Is it, all that kind of stuff. And I use that to update the app and make it more effective. Now, TRIPPD initially wasn't being included in the research because it was more a functional problem. So most of the research initially was on like actual physical damage to the vestibular nerve, vestibular migraine, BPPV. Was home-based rehab as effective? And it absolutely is. And the more recent research now is including things like TRIPPD. So can we rehab it at home without having to come and see someone in person? Absolutely we can. My own results with the data from people doing the app shows that. So, and as more research comes out, this is going to turn from these initial studies into big RCTs, into big systematic reviews, into big meta-analysis. So this is absolutely the way forward. So if you have any questions, please do let me know.